Workshop is called Iron on Iron, and it is a training exercise for ministries. And this year, we picked our friends on the East Coast, Vessel Skate Ministry, Skatepark Skate Ministry, and we are going to drill them hard. We are going to ask questions that make them feel uncomfortable. Jen is going to sing a song for us. You can follow along with me at the top there. So this is something that you should do with your ministry leadership team as a way of asking questions, being clear and honest. We got one more hand here, John. This is a way of answering questions, sharing each other's perspectives, finding like sticky spots in your ministry and addressing those things. Okay. So this is a good tool. We kind of fine-tuned it this year and got out of some of the legal ramblings to understand a little clearer of how to do this. So I hope that you can take this home with you guys and do this in your own ministry. So Max and Jen are acting as the facilitators on this list, okay? They are the ones that are going to keep this moving along. I will be the timekeeper, and the other participants are you guys, okay? So when we get down to the bottom there where it says, ask clarifying questions, we have a little chunk of time there. If you have something specific that you hear as they are talking and sharing their ministry life with you, write some notes down, and if you're going to have a question, you are going to be the one to ask those questions, and they're going to try to help clarify that. That's what clarifying means. So let's keep this thing moving along, and again, the focus is to do this with the lostness of your community in mind, all right? It's easy to get off track from your mission and vision that God has given you in ministry, right? It's very easy to do that. So without further ado, Max will take lead on this. Jen is going to help facilitate that, and I'm going to give you guys this microphone to share. But before we do that, I want you all to briefly introduce who you are, okay?
First up,
Jonathan.
Jocelyn.
Steven.
cool. Well, this is rad. I'm very joyful that I get to be a part of this. So also I was kind of telling you a little, but I think often the enemy tries to get in, and he makes things hidden that are barriers that we don't even realize are barriers. And so we've seen God really take out things that are rooted. And so this isn't to attack the person or the ministry, this is to attack the problem. And so, yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, if there's stuff that comes up and you're like, oh man, like, that's something that, I need to repent of, or I need to, like, just tell someone to repent or something. Like, yeah. So, first question, yes or no question. Are you personally abiding in Jesus regularly?
Yes.
Praise the Lord. Yes.
Yeah,
Everyone, personally, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Rad. Okay. Is there any unresolved conflict in your team? If that takes time to think about it, is there?
You just want a yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, it says yes or no on the paper, but you can, if you can.
I can elaborate.
Yeah.
I can elaborate.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited I got this question. I would say no. There's no, and I get like a brief, no unresolved conflict. I think briefly part of the reason that is the case. So we moved up to Massachusetts in 2018, far away from all of our families. The first 2 weeks me and Megan were married, we lived with the Shogies. And over the last 5 years, we've gotten extremely close with them. I worked with Stephen for 2 years, spent countless hours in the car. And through that time, we've all developed a relationship that is, I think I speak for all of us, that is open, comfortable. They're our family. If tragedy strikes, they're the first people I'm calling. And because of that, because of the comfort we have with each other, I think we've developed a really good relationship where if something's going on, I can approach Stephen or Jocelyn or Megan and and say something with my heart, and they know that our intention is never to tear them down, but just to build them up, and vice versa. And we're super blessed to have the community we have, and that's only been built through time, and a lot of it.
That's awesome. Praise Jesus. What is the vision that your ministry is laboring towards? What's the vision?
Using skateboarding as a vessel to share the gospel. So we open a free indoor skate park to use for ministry, to share the hope of Jesus with skateboarders and their families and the friends that come. That's it. It's a
Cool.
simple version.
That's the vision. Right. Okay, focusing on mission. Who are the kinds of people that you're engaging? Who are you engaging? I mean, we kind of just answered it a little bit. Yeah.
I would say this is kind of still developing a little bit. We opened to the public in December, so really December to March, April was our first busy season, if you will say. Obviously, most of you in Massachusetts is very cold and snowy, so people are looking for an indoor place in the winter time. I will say that obviously we're reaching skaters, that's the short answer. But to give a little bit more detail, I think what we've found is our biggest demographic seems to be skaters from 16 to 25, I would say, is the biggest group who come. But we also are reaching younger kids as well and their families. We have novice sessions and Stephen and another guy do lessons, and that's been a really big opportunity to connect with families, with parents of younger skaters as young as 5 to 12 probably are in that range who come and do lessons. Guys and girls, mostly guys, and very few believers. I would say, there are a few, but I'm probably 2% are Christian, and so 98% are far from the Lord, and some are in some pretty heavy and hard things.
Yeah, we've done studies on just the reality of lostness, and I think that the less believers is the more chance for a start of a movement. So that's just what we've seen personally. God move in the 1%, 2%. How are you guys engaging? How are you guys engaging them? In the sense of that makes sense. How are you?
Yeah, so Thursday through Sunday we offer art for free. And so, like I said, we have novice sessions in the mornings and Saturdays, and Thursday, I believe. And so, at that point, families are coming in, we're able to have conversations with parents a lot more, and then in the evenings, when it's open skate, more just one-on-one conversations with skaters, if they're out there skating with them, but we're able to have conversations at the desk and things like that. And so, just really building relationships, building friendships. Last year, we had friendships over Super Bowl at our house, and so just being able to build relationships that are obviously in a skate park central, but bringing them outside into our day-to-day lives and families. And the park is free, and so we present the gospel on Thursdays and Sundays. Thanks. Okay.
Reject that from your memory.
So the park space brings in a lot of people from basically all of New England, which is really cool because we're one of the only indoor parks in the area, so we get
Cool. Awesome. Well, one of the most important questions is how are you engaging them with the gospel? Do you have tools, and what are some tools that you're using? I think there's a lot of believers that aren't equipped,
Yeah, I think, like Megan was saying, every Thursday and Sunday at 6, we stop skating for 10 to 15 minutes. No one's allowed to skate during that time, and we just present the gospel. Stephen and I, or really anybody that comes into our park and connects with people, sees the same thing that everybody else here sees. People that don't see a need to be God, they're their own God. all of these issues, the Bible's not relevant, Christianity's not for me. And as we share, we try to just relate, make the gospel seem relevant, not in like, I don't know, just in a, hey, anxiety and depression has been a hard thing for me this last year. This is how the gospel engages that issue. Identity, how does the gospel engage that issue? Stephen talked about just making tough decisions, and the biggest decision that we'll all make in our life is, do you want to choose to follow Jesus, yes or no, and asking that question. And even having someone afterwards reach out and say like, yeah, because of that, I'm starting to read the Bible again. So that's definitely been a big way, is just sharing our testimonies and connecting with people. Guys like Thompson comes to our park frequently. He doesn't have a tool, but the dude just breathes the gospel. We do have different tools. We have the little John books that occasionally people will take. It's like a skater's story and then the book of John, and then we have, I don't know, that's just the book of John with a picture of a skater on the front. And then we do have that one thing that's got like a pro skater's story through it. Matt. Sorry if I just labeled Matt a pro skater, it's not. No offense. Oh, he is. Look at that. Hey, saying pro skater is a touchy subject. That's probably the biggest way. We teach people to build relationships and use those relationships to present the gospel to people and connect the gospel to their lives where they're at with it.
That's awesome. So cool. Well, even though I know you guys just started and you're getting up, but the more that you labor, you're going to start to see seeds sprout. And you're going to see people receive Jesus. And in Matthew 28:18-20, it says to teach them to obey all that I have commanded you. And so what are some ways that you guys, I know like some people have tools called Commands of Christ, and they go through the Commands of Christ. Or what are some ways, let's say you lead someone to Jesus, they come to know Jesus, and now it's the next step is teaching them to obey all that Jesus has commanded. What are some, do you guys have any tools or any ways that you guys have been doing that? Or just getting away with them, whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any specific tools
Yeah.
that we could
Yeah.
talk about, I guess. But yeah,
The
mainly,
Bible is
yeah,
the-
right, yeah, the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible is the best tool.
Yeah.
Trying to, our goal, I hope, is that wherever people are at, because people come from New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, wherever, trying to get them connected to a local church if they can't come to ours. Our church meets in the skate park on Sunday mornings, so we try to have that as like hey, like this is a comfortable place. Know these people, like we're gonna be there, so come in. So trying to get them connected with the local church, if it's not ours, and trying to encourage them to read the Bible and go through it with them, and they're like, hey, I know this is a normal thing in culture, but this is what the Bible says about it. And like, that's something we have to deal with.
Yeah,
Like, if you're going to submit to Christ, then you
Yeah.
have to deal with that. So.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Yeah, that's so cool. You kind of answered the next question, but which is good. That's a great thing. But I'll ask it anyways. How are you guys plugging? I mean, skaters, like relating to them and knowing how I was before I knew Jesus. I think a lot of skateboarders can be like anti-establishment, and like a lot of them are like, hey, come to my church, and like, no. You say, hey, like, come into the skate park and gather, and we're just gonna get into it. Or hey, you want to come over to my house and learn about Jesus? There's a study that like 98% of people will say yes to going into something that's more intimate, rather than like, hey, come into my church. So, what are some ways that you guys have, maybe effective ways that you guys have been seeing fruit in? Where you're like, hey, what's a great way that you've been plugging them in the community? Is it just being plugging into local churches and stuff?
Yeah. Try to, I think that's a big thing, like, wherever people are coming from, you could say like, oh, you should find a church there, but thankfully, our pastor is really connected with a lot of churches in the area, a lot of other pastors, and it's important to get them plugged into a local church, a solid church, and being able to have those connections and say like, hey, I know this guy, I know these people at this church, like it's awesome, these are great people. feel a little more comfortable, or they're a little more likely to be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, maybe I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Or if it's, coming to City Life, it's like, hey, we're there. You
Yeah.
know, you walk in and you're
Totally.
gonna know people in there already, and you know the space, you know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Because it's intimidating walking into a church that you've never been in before, even if you're believers sometimes.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
Oh,
I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's expected,
yeah.
but being able to say, hey, me, John, like, we're there.
Yeah.
You know us, it's comfortable, you don't
Yeah.
have to wear a suit. We're in the skate park, like,
So
so.
that's rad. Yeah, it's so cool. Like networking is so, it's so key, and just so many testimonies that we have seen through. Let's say there's people here that are like, hey, I just moved to Oceanside, or hey, I just moved to this city, and we like, oh, we know someone. That is awesome, and just connect. We love doing group chats. Just saying, hey, can I just send you the number and put them all in a group chat, and so that way it's like, okay, like. It's in your core, you know what I mean? So I think throughout when we see churches planted biblically and like what you guys are doing, what we see is like the more that we see new believers come and we start to gather them, and you guys might not even be in this stage yet, but we start to see not man appointed, but God appointed and anointed leaders from the new believers rising. And so, what are some ways that you've maybe, if you've seen it, that you have identified them, and maybe seen them rise up? It can be something like, oh, I noticed this kid is like, he's got a leadership role, and you can just tell. So, have you guys seen that? And if not, yeah.
Yeah, this is the new believers terminology has been difficult. I mean, we haven't seen anyone come to Christ through what we do. We've seen a couple of people get reconnected to the church that haven't been part of the church in a while, and they're super involved in some ways. It's a huge blessing to have guys like that. I think in some ways we see it in people that we'll get into in our 1, 3, and 9s, people that we see, and it's like, man, I really see God doing some awesome things in that person's life, and just continuing to keep them involved, connect with them. It's almost like, I don't know if I like the way this sounds. I don't, but I'm going to say it anyway. And sometimes part of my 9 is just people that I click with, and some of those people I connect with are people that also happen to line up with those people that are, man, I see God doing something in you, and you also have those leadership abilities. Let's connect. Let's continue to build this relationship. And in some ways, like, at some point, God can use that relationship to do awesome things. And then we are blessed with people like Thompson and Allison and stuff like that, who are, a lot of our believers, when we talk about how many believers you got, are here. It's like that and like 4 other people, which is awesome. So it's something that we're definitely working on, identifying and developing. It's honestly at this point spotting out unbelievers that have that potential. We want our leaders to be Christians, and so praying that God saves them and changes their hearts and lives, but continuing to connect with them, love them, and take them how far we can until then. Yeah.
Awesome. So cool. So the next question is weekly ministry rhythm. Just briefly share your weekly rhythm and schedule of how you're investing your time to advance the kingdom. Also, another thing I was going to say, if you're seeing a barrier in new believers, we've seen a lot of awesome stuff and heard the importance of fasting for new believers and neighbors. It's just like you start to see God just, I don't know, because I know you guys are praying, but man, we've seen God really break somewhere that has seen dryness for years to hundreds of people getting saved through fasting. But yeah, just some stuff that was on my heart. But yeah, we'll briefly share your
You talking about individually or?
I don't know. Would you? Yeah, individually. Yeah.
Just individually?
Yeah.
So, my weekly rhythm schedules would be prayer, time of the word, daily. Sunday, I'm involved in various different things. So, kids ministry, women's ministry, would be my rhythms on Sunday. And then I'd say day to day, outside of ministry, I am a therapist in work, and so I don't do specific Christian counseling, but I am open and I'm a Christian therapist, so I have some people that integrate faith into that, but mostly it's just general, just the general population of Massachusetts. But it's been very cool. Like since moving up there. Because previous living there, I was in just a Christian therapy world. That's the way to put it. So just been very intentional and great for my clients. And the second they bring up faith, which is generally I have no faith and I don't want any of this, just getting the Holy Spirit to intervene in their lives. And so just being able to integrate that throughout my day to day. And so even this past week, I got to have a gospel conversation with the client, and I didn't share it. She just started sharing things. So it's been really cool to see learn to do that in my own personal work life, and then these days of mom, kids, and sharing the gospel with our boys in various ways through just the parenting. So that would be probably my rhythm.
Megan's phenomenal. She's phenomenal at her job. And any client she has is blessed to have her. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And she spurs me on to love the Lord greater every single day. Pray. I tend to do most of my prayer time, most of my reading in the evening. I build it in somewhat into my work. Our mornings are chaotic for both of us. When we're away, our son sleeps until 8:30, but when we're there, he runs in at 6:30. So I tend to, when I get to work, I'll stop, I'll pray, I'll read the Word. Currently going through Joshua and some Psalms. Sharing. A big part of Vessel this summer has just been, we're not just a location, but we're individuals, and we want to connect with people outside of the location. So just having those opportunities, I've been trying to go to the park once a week, and the outdoor park, not just going to Vessel by myself, and sharing with a brick wall. No, just going there and just meeting people. The first time they ever see me, it's like, I only ever see you at Vessel. And I say, I only see you at Vessel too, so as far as I know, you don't skate anywhere else either. But just building those relationships, I think it's just been a huge way for us to show, hey, we're here all seasons, all year round. Disciple, I also lead a men's group Monday night. We'll continue to start that again. Church, preach occasionally, go on Sunday, very avid attenders. I wouldn't say there's necessarily anybody at this point in my life that or currently, not that it can't happen, that I'm coaching. But that's me.
It's funny, it says weekly rhythms, and I'm thinking, I'm still trying to get into a rhythm in some ways. We had a baby in June, and she was our fourth, and so we have 4 kids, 8 girls, 8, 6, 3, and 3 months, and so the rhythm is getting there. But every day looks a little bit different. If you have young kids, you know that. But no day is the same. Our 2 oldest just are starting school, and so they are in school now during the day, which has been a good rhythm of kind of adjusting to this new season of the fall. But all that to say, I feel like mornings are so chaotic, and I always have the intention of I'm gonna wake up early and before the kids get out of bed and pray and read my Bible and just sit, and that happens maybe 10% of the time, if I'm being honest. And sometimes it's because, you know, the baby was up in the middle of the night and I'm tired and I want to sleep in. And so honestly, currently working on a rhythm that works for me in terms of like, when can I sit in silence? And by nature, I'm not a person that likes to sit in silence. I tend to just go and busy myself, and many things are responsibilities I have. But yeah, so I think for me, it's been looking like getting the kids ready in the morning and off to school. I drive them to school, and then usually when I get home from that, I have my time where I have my time that I just spend in prayer and read most days. That has been working well. And then as far as investing time to advance the kingdom, I feel like right now it's at home with my family and with our kids. That's just the season of life we're in, and I love it. And it's just been, yeah, it's been awesome to have the blessing of children and having a big family. And 4 kids in New England is a big family. Like, maybe not in the Midwest. You see all these families with like 8 kids. In New England, like, I go out in public with my 4 kids and people have like a look of shock on their face. They're like, are these all yours? Anyways. So yeah, so rhythm schedule, I don't even know if I answered that, but yeah, we're also involved with our church and women's Bible study. I do real estate part-time as well, and so this has also been a cool opportunity of ministry for me. My brokerage is actually Christian-based, so our broker is a believer, and kind of the model that they use is mission over commission, and so it's marketplace ministry, doing ministry wherever you are, and so being able to share even about the vessel and the ministry that we do with my clients with work and stuff has been a really cool opportunity as well.
Sweet.
I, for whatever reason, somehow by the grace of God, I've been able to just sit in the midst of the chaos at home and read my Bible and pray and stuff. So I do that daily. I wish that I woke up earlier and before all the girls got up, but thankfully it's been good from time to time, waking up early and getting our youngest out and going through a devotional and reading it to her, even though she wasn't going to do the same. It's been awesome. But yeah, church, we're involved in leading worship from time to time. And then obviously busy with the park and trying to sharing regularly there and at skate parks, outdoor parks, trying to connect with people. And, yeah.
Well, I want to do, okay, who is your 1 through 9? It says mentoring, discipling, and outreaching. One answer. I guess I guess just do like, do you guys have mentor, discipling, and outreaching?
Speak up.
Oh, sorry. Who is your 1 through 9? Yeah.
For the 1 through 9, yeah, that's, I feel like for myself, that's an area, I saw the question, and I'm like, man, I don't have those identified or those like solidified the way that I think with now I wish I did.
Okay, yeah.
I think our pastor, we meet regularly with our pastor, and so I would consider him a mentor, and obviously Jeff and Kyle, but yeah, I think having those things solidified more
Yeah.
is something that I want.
Yeah.
Like reading that question is kind of a.
Yeah,
Okay.
blind spot.
Okay.
Yeah, blind spot for all of us. Not having.
I got a question over here, real quick. Now, I'm just curious, where does the 139 come from? I've never heard that before.
Like this whole tool is developed by some people who just started to see movement of God and multiplication of disciples and churches being made. And what they saw, not just in their own movement, but movements throughout history, was that there can be barriers, or there always is barriers. And so a lot of this is actually broken down, but there's a lot. The original one has a lot of words that are like, what is 4 fields? What is, so it's just like certain tools or expressions or like stuff that they come up with. It just means like, what is mentoring? It's like, yeah, it's an organization of group of people that do this, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
can I add to that?
Yeah.
So there's also a book called The Man Code, and our church is also, our women's group went through it. It's 139, but those are the numbers that Christ walked with. Christ had his 1, he was 1 with the Father. Matthew, Mark, Luke were his 3. Then he had his 9. And then it also goes on that you should have 50, which is your community. And then you should have your 3,000, which is past that and on. But the book is called Man Code. It's a short read. You can read it in like an hour. It's a really good book. Thank you. You're welcome.
Facilitator. Review the barriers to focus solutions on. Yeah. Just review.
Okay, so basically your guys' barrier is the 139.
Maybe some
That,
new believers.
right, new believers.
Did you guys see that?
Okay. So I encourage you guys to take time and really pray about God highlighting these people to you to be able to facilitate having a mentor, discipling other people. And then I'm doing the encouragement. Okay. I just made a whole bunch of little notes. So, one thing that really stuck out, which I think makes a solid team, is your guys' open communication. And that easily came, well, through time, it came from you guys digging in and doing life together and having deep roots connected to the Father, but then that allows you guys to have vulnerability to be connected to each other really well. So then you can have a solid team. So then when you're approaching the 139, you're able to do that better because you guys came together and had history. So then as you guys are able to disciple others, if something comes up, because you guys have walked through life together, you're able to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is going on, and how can you help me walk through this with the person I'm mentoring or discipling? The connecting, you guys, God gave you guys a vision for a vessel, and it was for skaters, but the fact that you're having this almost side door opening from God of kids coming in and families that aren't believers. So it's like God gave you this vision, but he's like, here's this extra little nugget of getting to speak to kids and families and planting seeds. You're gonna see that here from now, or your kids are gonna see that. And that's the biggest thing, because you're being intentionally present in the people that are there. So even though you have this vision of what God's wanting you to do, being present in the moment is planting way more seeds than just following the big vision, because you're doing the day-to-day stuff. Just like as you two, as mothers, it's chaotic as a mom. Sorry, this is not my comfort zone. But I just want to say, like, your intentionality of taking your kids to school, going to work, all those little tiny things is setting a great solid foundation for your kids to pick up the mantle of where you guys will finish. And then vessel explodes, and they're able to be a part of that. They're seeing you walk out the gospel in front of them, and God will just use that. You might not always have the right words, but God's going to continue to use your daily devotion and surrender to Him to change your guys' city and skaters' lives that you may never even meet, but because you share the gospel with this person, they're going to share the gospel with 5 people years from now when they dug into the word and they built a relationship with God. And another thing that stuck out was your guys' mindset of connecting outside of just being at Vessel, because yeah, you can be in a building, but there's such a world outside that's so chaotic and constantly going, that being outside of that and just seeing places, especially being in a society where we're so stuck on social media. And I love seeing people's clips and all of that, but to actually get to see that in person and then give them a high five and say, hey, great job and stuff, instead of just liking a button. Like, that's that personal connection. People need that. That's why the world's lost, because they don't have that. And so I just want to say thank you guys for doing what you're doing. In marketplace ministry is another huge thing, because unfortunately for so long the church has been so inside the 4 walls, which is great. Like, you have to be solid in your word, you have to have teaching and stuff, but to be outside and be able to take that everywhere is a beautiful tool, because you don't know who God's going to send your way to buy a house or to need counseling, and just being able to pray for that person behind the scenes in your prayer closet will change their life, and they may never even know it. So those are my words of encouragement and gratitude for what you guys are doing and saying yes to Jesus and what he's asked you to do.
We're going to keep it moving along, but one quick word of encouragement that I know about these guys. Kyle and I and a couple of other people went to help physically build the skate park. And within just a couple days of spending time, we stayed at their house, they opened it up and welcomed us there, and we crashed in the basement. But I would wake up every morning early to get upstairs and have coffee, get into the Word a little bit. And Stephen and Jocelyn's oldest daughter, Selah, was up already. And she would be sitting in Mom's chair with the Bible opened up. And I'm like, hey, you're up early? What are you reading? She's like, the Bible. and I'm like, cool, that's cool. What are you reading? And she's like, Joshua. I'm like, whoa, what are you learning about Joshua? And she's like, the Bible. However, a young girl doesn't get to that point unless she sees it being modeled, right? So, when Jonathan says something like, we haven't seen anybody come to Christ yet in our ministry, things are sprouting and going to grow, and you might not see it, but others can begin to see it too. So as we move into this next little section of the ask clarifying questions and discuss solutions that address barriers, we're going to spend a little time, and that's going to be where you guys come in. So you've heard bits and pieces of their story. I'm sure that somebody in here has something in their mind where, wow, I'd like to encourage them to approach something this way, or maybe think about it this way, or the Bible says this. Does anybody have something like that pops up immediately? Brooks? I can do it.
I can talk loud if that's
okay. Yeah.
Man, first I wanted to encourage you in pointing you guys to the local church to see more of, not just a Bible study, but the body. You know, being together with a corporate group of believers, which is awesome. So I thank you guys for that. And I wanted to kind of ask, clarifying, how do you find those churches or pastors that you believe in, that you feel comfortable sending them to, other than the one you go to? Because I wrote down, I would love to find those in my community, but did you just go visit churches? Did you talk to the pastors? Did you gauge that? Or did you just say well, this is one in a denomination I feel comfortable with, maybe you could go there? How do you do that, I guess?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I mean, we really spent we had a lot of, I mean, this year, or this time last year, we prayed that we would pass our inspection in October, and we failed. The park was built and ready in March, and we weren't able to open until December. And I like to think we were vigilant to really, and we're also blessed in the sense that our pastor, super supportive of our ministry, and pretty well connected amongst New England, so there was some good connections there. And also our first year as a church in New England, we just attended other churches, and being from outside the area, met with other pastors, and were able to build those relationships and those connections to like see who solid people were. And I think we've just been very open of like, hey, here's something we're doing in the community. We'd love just to get lunch with you, just to connect, to say, hey, what are you doing? It's been vital for us because some random numbers, we've had 1,400 people come, 200 of those people come from out of the state. We have a regular guy who comes out an hour and 10 minutes there's not many indoor skate parks, and we know people come from far. So assimilating people into our church isn't too plausible, so we've really just had to try to meet with pastors as far out as we can, sit down with them, get to know them, share our heart, hear their heart, and that's been the biggest thing. And then just saying, the guy that messaged Stephen the other day, we know Matt Tromley, who just started reading the Bible again, lives like an hour and 10 minutes away. As much as we want to connect with him when he's here, it's not reasonable necessarily outside of the internet for us to be like his guy, and we need to connect him to a local body. So luckily we have those connections to churches to say, hey, we know of this church locally, and help in that way.
One thing I just thought of too is New England is very, very lost and like very small. And it's not like all of New, like you can get to all the states within an hour, pretty much. And so local churches are not as many, right? And so I would say like the familiarity of where we live, like it's just easier to point them out and find Bible-believing churches, gospel-centered churches, because it is so few and far between, and New England's like very lost. So all the pastors are like truly a team. Like our pastor is like close and does Bible studies with all the pastors in Worcester where we're at. And I know like coming from Virginia, that's not often the case with like some church communities. Like they can kind of almost be, like I've seen like churches almost at odds, like to like build their churches. It's not that way in New England. So I think that's also part of our area location, and we just do have we have a list like of all the churches in the area and contacts and things like that. So that definitely helps as well.
Brooks, does that answer?
Perfect,
Okay.
thank you. Dave? Yeah, so I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Brooks said. I want to encourage you guys too. There's a ministry called 9 Marks. So if you go to 9marks.org, it's great because they actually have a church finder. So what they do is you type in your zip code, and they actually will look at healthy churches in your area, and they'll point you toward those churches. So some of the things they're looking at is this church faithfully preaching the word? Do they have qualified leadership? What are they doing? So I want to encourage you guys, 9marks.org is a great tool to find a church.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, hey, I just have a question. How do you guys fund yourself? Like, for the fact that you guys are a free skate park, I'm like, what? Really? And I'm sure a lot of people might be thinking, like, is there a catch or something? So how do you fund
we're about to
yourself?
pass around the tithe plate.
And then the other thing I just wanted to encourage you with is I learned something recently, like when you mentioned that you haven't seen somebody come to faith. I learned something recently that really encouraged me, and hopefully this encourages you, but I don't know if you knew this, but did you know that it takes 5 years for bamboo to grow even a single bamboo shoot? So for 5 years, all it's doing is just growing the roots. You walk by and you think there's nothing happening. But bamboo, it's just building a foundation, right? 5 years. And then, when it sprouts, in some places, it grows 90 feet tall in 5 weeks. And so what I'm believing in faith right now is, yeah, you're open, but guess what? you're still just growing those roots. And there's going to be a season where roots start shooting up. And I'm just believing in faith. And I just love your honesty. The fact that you're like, you know what, we haven't seen anybody come to faith. Because sometimes as pastors and Christians, well, there's that one kid, he kind of said, I think he said he loved Jesus. We got one. You know what I mean? So I love the fact that you're honest, but I just believe that you're building a foundation. So, hey, how do you guys fundraise money? Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's yeah, people ask about numbers. I mean, I'll get to the donations and stuff in a second, but yeah, people ask about numbers, and it's one of those things like, oh, how many people have gotten saved? Oh, no one yet. I mean, anyway, yeah, planting seeds is huge.
Amen.
It's huge, and not everybody is there at the moment when someone gets saved. Like, maybe you planted a seed, someone else is seeing fruit from it. But yeah, we opened for free. We started in 2020. We started fundraising, just talking to people that we know, our friends, family, talking about this crazy idea that they've never heard of before. Thankfully, we've seen it done before. Kyle Brush, free skateboard. So it was one of those things like, he does it. I know God's gonna do it. So maybe we look crazy, but would you guys like to support this idea of a free indoor skate park? Like, okay, yeah. So we've talked to people. We've connected. We have a few churches. I think 5 churches that support us monthly. We've had other churches that have given some one-time donations and stuff. And people who come in, we have like a little offering box or whatever. So people will throw in a $20 bill sometimes, or 50 cents, whatever. But and people can donate when they register for a session. It's free, but we ask people to register so it doesn't get like super crowded in there, because everyone can come because it's free. But yeah, so, and we're doing a fundraising banquet October 13th. So pray for that we just get like $100,000. And yeah.
Just to touch on that, because Stephen won't say it, he's too humble. A lot of hard work, and anybody that's done any fundraising knows that. I mean, from late 2019, when Stephen was asked if money wasn't an issue, what would you do for God? And he said, an indoor skate park, and was then challenged, what are you doing about it? Birthed the start of him making calls and putting in a lot of work. And obviously, God is behind it all and prompted people to give, but a lot of work, years in the making of just a lot of phone calls, connecting with people, sharing the vision of what God is doing. What's that book? No, well, the God Ask is a great book. What's the little book? Fundraising as a Ministry. It's a really small little book that's been helpful as of recently to us as well. Yeah.
Anybody else? A question or a
Spirituality.
solution?
Yeah.
Anybody else have a thought, question, solution, suggestion? Thompson?
This is another encouragement that goes along with the roots. Having been to Bethel a handful of times and being able to do a couple outdoor events and skating with Stephen around Boston, around Massachusetts a few times, what I admire so much is that every single kid, at least 90% of them, walking in the doors of Bethel, know Stephen and Jonathan's name. And Stephen and Jonathan know their name. So there's been this very intentional connection and friendship and comfortability being established, which I struggle with doing that, so I really respect that there's this level of like security that I think people feel when they come into Bethel. But what I'd like to see and be a part of, and I'm going to pose the question, what's next? Now that some of those roots have been laid, and of course, like we've kind of talked about it and stuff before, but how about like a Bible study option, or sort of is there anything on the the stovetop, like brewing for how do we bring it to the next level?
Thompson, you just lit the candle inside my heart. Yeah, we have a lot of hopes and aspirations. Yeah, the Bible study aspect is something that we're hoping to offer. We're just trying to figure out day-wise and of just something outside of that to say, hey, we have this optional Bible study that meets at this time. If you want to connect to kind of continue the conversations that we have on Thursdays and Sundays, that's great. Our fundraiser, part of our fundraiser in October is the space next to us has recently become vacant. A space that Stephen's been praying about for some time. We're considering expansion and stepping in more into the art culture side of things to where a kid could come in, and this is all part of funding and grants and stuff, but taking a decently nice camera and he could shoot pictures of his buddy or videos, go into the back in our office space, edit those videos into a clip or into a movie, doing graphic design classes and workshops, in some ways giving people in the community a place to kind of just express their love for art and grow in different career paths and different things like that. And then, I mean, we've had aspirations of like coming out with a yearly magazine or like just a skate video, kind of like what Untitled does, to where it's not just a skate video with clips, but we're weaving the gospel through it all the way, and then we have like a premiere at the park, and people are... Sorry, did I go over? To where people are seeing some like awesome skating at the park that hopefully they love, and they're hearing the gospel at the same time. So that's some of what's now. I could speak for the next 3 hours though.
Last trick. What do you got?
Yeah. So we're talking about leadership, looking for leaders, and how you don't really see that. One of the things we've done at JSAW that really develops leaders quickly at a young age is put them in charge of little things.
Yep.
And so, like, when it comes to, if you had a Bible study, for instance, and you want to gather kids up, you empower one kid to go gather the other kids.
Yep.
And then they gain a sense of ownership over that thing, and that begins to develop their leadership and their excitement about the topic, which helps to build and develop them into a leader that can then be discipled to then go and make disciples. So,
Amen.
It's really good. Yeah. I had the same kind of thing I wanted to say. Just the importance of releasing authority. When we planted our church, we were seeing, like, we saw a girl, 15 years old. We led her to the Lord at the skate park, and she got saved, and she burned all of her tarot cards and all of her crystals and all everything. But the moment that these new disciples recognize that they can make disciples, and that they can baptize people, and that they can plant churches, it is an ignition and an equipping that Ephesians 4 talks about. That you guys, as the prophets, evangelists, teachers, your biblical and our biblical job and description in that scripture is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And the importance, we've seen churches get planted and thrive, and we saw a church that had 1,500 baptisms in 3 weeks. But the importance is what multiplied from that. There were some churches that thrived, and because of the lack of the release of authority, they fell. The same with movements. And so let these young kids know that they can do exactly what you guys are doing, and it ignites them. We've seen that kids. So, yeah.
All right, so let's move. What's that? Emma? Okay.
I was just gonna say, like, you guys plugging the kids that you're witnessing to into the local church is raising up leaders. Like, you guys are totally doing that. Because discipleship happens under sound teaching, and that's where leaders are raised. So you might not feel like you're doing it or see it, but by plugging those kids into solid, Bible-believing, Bible-teaching churches, you're doing it.
All right, so as you think about how this exercise went, I'm sure you're thinking in your brain, this is something I could apply to my own ministry when I get back home, or maybe you would tweak this little questions a bit, and that's totally cool. But Max, let's spill into, now that we've heard the questions and the concerns and the ideas, as the person that is doing the facilitating, what are the couple action steps that you can suggest to the group?
To go through the barriers we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the action plan.
So, Acts 19, it says use scripture. So Acts 19, it says that Paul and his disciples, they went to Asia. And it says all of Asia heard the gospel in 2 years. And historically, that was 8 to 15 million people. And so all of 8 to 15 million people heard the gospel. And maybe not all received it, but all heard it. And that's our job. Planting seeds, right? And that wasn't Paul and his, maybe if you were to say even lucky, 50 dudes. Let's say it's Paul and 50 dudes. They didn't walk across Asia. They made disciples who made disciples who made disciples, and they planted churches who planted churches who planted churches. And so you were talking about your guys' state, that it's small. So something that we like to do is look at the population of our state, look at the reality of the lostness, and see what is the most effective, biblical, and reproducible way, and simple way that we can see a movement start to where all of our state is going to hear the gospel. And it's going to be at the point, like we planted a church, and some people, because of us apostolically moving across the states, people don't even know who planted the church, but the church is planted. And so that was on my heart when you guys were talking, was Acts 19, because I think it can be such a heaviness, the reality of lostness, and like if we really have a burden on our hearts for what burdens God's heart, which is the lost, that there's eternal hell, like for me, I have homies who died when I was in high school, and they were 16, 15, 19, and I know right now that they're not spending an eternity with God. And so the reality of the heaviness there, that's a burden on our hearts. Our vision is, man, we want to reach. And it's not about the multitudes, sometimes. Like really most of the time it's not. It's about looking for that one. And so as you're going, Sydney and I, we have it's God's grace is awesome. And we get to see hundreds of people come to faith. But man, our hearts are looking for that one that will carry the gospel steadfast for the rest of their lives. And so I encourage you guys, as you walk, look for that one person.
One.
That just wants it and is all in. Because there's a hunger that God's putting in the next generation's heart that is longing for the gospel and that is longing for truth and purpose. And they're looking for Jesus. And if we just show them that it's Him, they'll receive it. So, that's the biggest thing. And if you guys don't have a gospel tool that's being reproduced, there's tons of equipping, and I'm sure you guys do, but just to engage in one-on-one, because, I don't know, Skate Church is one of the most beautiful things ever, but, some of these kids, my friend, I have a friend, Grant, he was here last year, and he's like, man, it's gotten to the point, and this is a barrier that he's run into, it's gotten to the point where, it's time for Bible study, and all the kids are like, all right, and they drag their feet, and they listen, and that's awesome. But he says the moment that he engages them one-on-one, it's like, bro, you were sitting down listening to the word and teaching, you didn't want anything to do with it, but now that I'm talking to you about it one-on-one, it's like you want, that's all you want. Some of these kids just want to be heard and listen to you and encourage you to do the same. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So at the end of it, obviously, is to pray. So I want to just do it simply, and all of you guys at your individual tables, maybe pray for just the ministry or one of their leadership team. But we're just going to spend a couple 2 minutes praying specifically for vessel ministry. Okay? So let's do that now, and then after that, we'll have a quick word.